Hello, my name is Jeff Holiday, and it's been a while since I posted a video. There's a really good reason for that. You see, currently right now there are wildfires all over Oregon, Washington, Idaho, California, and the smoke has gotten so bad here that it's been over 400 in the air quality index, so very hazardous to be outside. Yeah, the garage is a little bit better, but it's not easy. It's not easy to be in here for any length of time. As well, today was the very first day of school for my little man, and I'm very, very proud of him, very excited for that. He's there right now. I get to go pick him up a little bit later. Very excited to see how his day went. Now, today, we're going to be talking about a very serious topic. And when I do these types of things, when I'm talking about something kind of heavy, I tend to do a little bit something different with my videos than just simply this very colorful, cool background sort of thing. Instead, we tend to make it black and white, like this. Now, it might seem kind of dramatic, might seem kind of like, well, isn't that kind of a weird play on emotions? But I don't really necessarily think so. You see, when you really want to capture somebody's attention, when you want them to know the seriousness of what you're talking about, it sometimes can be really beneficial to add that element of atmosphere. And today is something that is not something that's easy for me to talk about. It bothers me quite a bit. In fact, as of this recording right now, this is the third time I have recorded this video. The other two I had to scrap because, well, to be completely blunt and honest with you, I got too emotional. And having emotion about this is perfectly natural and it's normal, but I feel like I rambled too much because I was too emotionally compromised at the time when I was talking about it. So here we go. Maybe third time's a charm. We'll see. After 3 times of recording this video, you think I'd finally come up with a good way to introduce what's going on, but I still keep coming up with nothing. So I'm going to do what I've done the last 2 times I tried, and I'm just going to say it outright. My mother has Alzheimer's. She does. And I haven't really talked about it too terribly much. I've mentioned it a little bit here and there in smaller videos or on live streams and whatnot, but I haven't made a huge talk about it. I haven't put it up on my main channel where I have the largest audience, and the reason for that is because I didn't want to try and be milking a very unfortunate situation that's going on. But the longer that everything went on and the more I've been stressed out about this, I feel like there's a lot of people who've seen kind of a bit of a change in me, where I seem to have a little bit less patience with other people or with the topics that I cover, and they wonder why. They think maybe there's something else that's stressing me out, something else that's bothering me quite a bit. And I figure if maybe at least I can give some good advice or something that might help people in the future, then it's at least worth it to explain where I'm coming from and maybe help others who might have to deal with this topic as well, because it's not easy. I guess the best place to start is to talk about what is Alzheimer's. Now, whenever you watch a video or read an article about Alzheimer's, they almost always say the same thing. Alzheimer's is not a natural part of aging. They always say it. They always say it. And there's a reason why they always bring that up. There's a reason why they state that emphatically over and over again, and why I'm doing it too. And the fact of the matter is that Alzheimer's is a disease. It's not a natural part of aging. It is something that can, in theory, be addressed, and with enough biomedical research, maybe we can even cure. We can prevent it from happening, because it's pretty rough. But Alzheimer's in and of itself, there's a video that I'm going to link that explains the entire science behind how Alzheimer's works, and it's brilliant. If you want to understand in depth all of the interesting biochemical aspects of it, I encourage you, go watch it. It's fascinating. But to very roughly sum it up, Alzheimer's is caused by a buildup of proteins, and these proteins can cause tangles. They can also cause plaques. Basically, these will build up and either shred the ability of neurons in the brain to communicate, shred them apart, or will choke them apart from each other. And what this ends up causing is the brain shrinks. The gaps between the wrinkles will deepen, the surface area shrinks, and the fluid-filled gaps inside of the brain expand. So overall, you have diminished brain capacity. The first place this always ends up attacking is around the hippocampus and other places that are associated with memory. So you start losing the ability to recollect things very recently. Your short-term memory is extremely diminished. You start losing your ability to recall certain things. And eventually, as it progresses worse and worse, it can start affecting your motor functions, your empathy skills, your judgment skills, etc., etc., etc. And one thing that's very important to understand about Alzheimer's is that when someone has Alzheimer's, at any point in time that you talk to them or you have an experience with them, they will never get better. As it stands right now, with what we have, with what we understand about Alzheimer's and the treatments that we have, they're not going to get any better. It is a progressively worse and worse disease. It is degenerative. And it's important to be realistic about these things too, because you don't want to be buying into false hope. You have to understand this so that you can be prepared for it. Now, my family's history with Alzheimer's is not just my mother. My grandfather, her father had it. Now, I didn't even realize this when I was a kid, when I was growing up. My grandfather always just seemed like this goofy kind of Mr. Magoo almost character, who just would teach me as a young kid the silliest little games in the garage, and he loved to sit there and watch his baseball and shout at his favorite team. So to me, I never saw anything wrong, but my mother and my mother's mother, his wife, saw him progressing further and further down. It's also kind of important to note that my grandfather died of Alzheimer's when he was 72. So then my mom gets it, and it developed very slowly at first, and then it became rapidly worse and worse and worse and worse. And now there's also two other types of Alzheimer's that we need to address. There is the Alzheimer's that is late onset Alzheimer's, which you usually get when you're much further along in life. And then there's hereditary Alzheimer's. And they both function effectively the same. But hereditary can affect you a lot earlier in life. And it is more of a certainty. It's basically tracked through trends from, parent to child, which is what my mother has. And that's why this is not just horrifying for me because my mother is experiencing this, but because as it stands right now, in about 30 years, maybe 25 to 28 years, there's a very real chance that I, too, will someday have Alzheimer's. And the thought of it terrifies me. Absolutely terrifies me. My dad knew there was something going on with my mom a long time ago, and he wasn't really sure what it was. I advised him a couple of times to go and seek out a neurologist, and he did, but the problem is where he lives, it's not very easy to have a doctor that you're going to see the same doctor over and over again. They keep referring him to different doctors, so there's no long record of treatment or ideas or options that they were talking through. So for a time, there was a thought that she might not have Alzheimer's, but instead she was having hundreds and hundreds of micro strokes, which were causing brain damage. And this is particularly spooky because at the time she was taking a certain type of medication, which was known to increase the possibility of stroke. So her entire pharmaceutical intake that she needed to take for the various different other health ailments that she has, because she's an older woman, she's an elderly woman, everything got twisted up, turned around, and changed on her, which caused huge mood swings, all sorts of other external problems. It was horrifying. It was an absolute terrible, terrible time. Thankfully, eventually they got it cleared up, and there was a full diagnosis. Yes, she has Alzheimer's. She has Alzheimer's, and we need to start addressing it as Alzheimer's. And it was important to do this because at the time, my mom and my dad, these are retired people. They're elderly, and they live in a small town. So there wasn't really a whole lot for my mom to do. And so she would be so understimulated while this disease is just degenerating her brain. So she would have these moments where she would be afraid or excessively angry. The mood swings were starting to kick in worse and worse and worse every single day. And even more so, the people who would be a good support network for her, for my father, their friends, their close loved ones, even some of our family, were so spooked by what was happening to my mother that rather than maintain that support system For my father, they left. They disappeared. They stopped coming around. They didn't call anymore. They didn't check in. And suddenly, my dad was left all alone. And I'd go down and I'd visit him as often as I could. But I have a 5-year-old kid. I've got a wife. I couldn't do it every day. I couldn't even do it every week. But I tried as often as I could because I became the only person that my dad could talk to. And so we'd talk on the phone as often as we could. And so this started becoming worse and worse. And it was coming to a head because he also was having health problems. His health was starting to fail him. And he went in and he talked to a specialist. And they basically said that he needed to start taking care of himself or he was going to die before she would. And then who's going to take care of her? That he needed to address this rationally and brutally and honestly. So about a year ago, my dad had to put my mom into a memory care facility. And that's where she is now. Now, when this happened, I was furious. I didn't tell him I was furious. You know, I tried to be as objective as possible, and I tried to be as supportive as possible. And I knew what kind of hell he had been through. And I won't go into the details of it, but it was bad. It was so, so bad. And I didn't feel like I was in a position that I could judge my father for having to make that very hard call. You have to remember, this is someone who spent well over 30 years of his life with the same person by his side through everything. Everything. The one person that knows the most about you, and you know everything about them. And you've been adventuring through life, raising children together, and now you're watching them slowly go insane, lose the capacity to do even the most basic tasks. You're watching them fall apart. I can think of no greater hell than what my father was having to go through. But still, I was mad. My mom? In a home? How could you? So it was a really rough time for me. A really rough time for me when that happened. And I went through some pretty rough times. I basically kept a lot of what was bothering me off camera. I tried not to talk about it too much on the internet. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I wanted to just deal with it how I needed to. But that was the moment that I picked smoking back up again. Was the day that my mom went into a memory care facility. Is the day that I started smoking again. Because I couldn't handle it. Fucked me up really bad. But my dad said, look, come down, come for a visit, see her in the home, and see how different things are now. You have to see it to understand. I was pretty spooked to do so. I wasn't really looking forward to it whatsoever, but I'm not going to not see my mom. I have to see my mom. I love my mom. We haven't always had the best relationship, that's for sure. But I love her very dearly. So I went, and I was very, very worried about this. I felt like I was going to throw up, the whole trip down. But we went in, and as soon as we go into this house, and at first it's a beautiful place, beautiful, beautiful place. We go into this house, and she's sitting on this recliner surrounded by all these old people. Some are way worse off than she is. But she sees me and her whole face brightens. She goes, "Oh, my son!" She comes running up to me, gives me a big hug. "I'm so happy you're here to see me on set." On set? So this is the set, huh, Mom? Looks nice. "Oh, yeah, let me introduce you to the producer. This is our producer." This little old man, Alzheimer's is so bad he can't even talk anymore. But he could kind of understand, and he's a very cheerful fellow. So he looks at me and he's like, "Oh, nice to meet you. Okay, cool." Takes me all throughout this house. Tells me all about the movie they're shooting. She's so proud because she's always wanted to be working in the movies, and now she's working. I remember. I think maybe she was either a costume designer or like a production assistant or something. But she was so proud, so proud, and her eyes were clear. She could make more sense of everything that was going on here than in the last 2 years when I would see her and hang out with her. She's always confused. She had no. We'd go to a restaurant. She could barely hold a thought in her head. Could barely order from a menu. She was having trouble even being able to read. Not because her eyes were getting bad, but because the disease was causing it. So it was hard for her to hold into her mind what she was reading at the time. So, like, I was watching my mom fall apart, but here in this environment, where something is new every day and there's activities going to stimulate her mind, to keep her active and to not be stuck in one place and terrified, she was thriving, and she still is. Now, it's not perfect, and she is getting worse, but she will. And that's just the reality of the situation. My mom is not going to live much longer. And I've come to terms with that. It's not easy. There are days where it affects me more than others. There are days when it just kind of hits me in the chest and it sucks all the energy out of me. But, you know, I have obligations in life. I have obligations to my family, to my wife, my child. I have obligations to my job, doing YouTube. And so I have to, as an adult, compartmentalize exactly how and when I fall apart and how much I allow myself to buckle underneath it. But I know that ultimately you have to deal with these things. You have to implement the self-care of yourself. Same thing my dad had to learn. You have to learn your limits and the healthiest ways to deal with emotional stress. You have to. Otherwise it'll wreck you worse than the person that you care so much about and how deeply they're affected by whatever it is that they're going through. To help others, you have to first take care of yourself. You just have to. It's part of life. Part of life and part of everything. So what's the point of making this video? The point of making this video is because I needed to talk about it. I needed to kind of get it out there. I feel like I will have some relief by doing this. And also because Alzheimer's, almost as many people a year in America die from Alzheimer's as they do from cancer. Yeah, there are more for cancer, but only by a small margin. Very, very small margin. And for every $1 we spend on Alzheimer's research, we spend 10 on cancer. And Alzheimer's is not a normal part of aging. It is something that we can hopefully defeat, which would be great. So I guess I'm doing this video because I want people to understand where I'm coming from, what I've been dealing with, because I needed to vent, and because hopefully, and because there are so many people who have Alzheimer's affecting their loved ones, that, you know, you're not alone. There's a lot of us out there. And it's a lot of times something that people really don't want to talk about, because it's horrifying to go through. It's a terrible, terrible thing to have to experience, to see this happening to your loved one. So you have my compassion and my respect for having to go through it. But also, the other reason why I wanted to make this is because if you are friends or part of a support system or family members of somebody who has a loved one that is going through Alzheimer's, don't pull away. Don't pull away. No matter how terrifying it gets, don't pull away. Because the truth of the matter is, they're as uncomfortable as you might be seeing someone that you once loved or respected, or still love and respect, losing their mind, going through this agony. The people that have to take care of them are also suffering. And whereas you can't help that person with Alzheimer's, you can help the person who helps them. And people need it, even if it's just a phone call, even if it's just a quick little letter, even if it's just a stopover for 10 or 15 minutes for a cup of coffee. You should do it, because it costs you practically nothing, but it will mean the world to someone else. Before I go, I'd like to share a couple of pictures with you. These are pictures of my mother. There's a picture of her just recently. There she is, celebrating her birthday. 74 years young, still beautiful. I love my mom very, very much. Thank you very much for watching this video. I greatly appreciate it. I appreciate you, all the viewers out there. Much love to my patrons. Much love to my friends. Some of the ones I've confided in over the past few months that have given me a great deal amount of comfort. And I look forward to the future. Now that kiddo's in school, it's going to be a lot easier for me to make videos. A lot easier. And yeah, big changes coming soon. Fall is almost upon us, so the oppressive heat is almost gone. I am into it. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling great about my channel. Yeah, absolutely. Everything's fantastic. Well, more or less. Have a wonderful day.